Thanks, guys, for that shipper update this morning. We'll check in with Anthony again coming up in just a few minutes. We've got Brian Wynne here this morning talking all things drones. Of course, this is one of my favorite subjects to talk about. Cover drones a lot on my show, At Your Doorstep. Brian, welcome to FreightWaves Now. Really excited to get into this discussion with you.
Thanks, Kaylee. Great to be here with you.
So when it comes to drones, we do a lot of forecasting, a lot of speculation, because the idea is there, the technology is there, but the legislation and the actual use cases aren't quite there yet. What are you guys seeing on your side of things? How close are we to really seeing widespread, large-scale drone delivery?
Yeah, we're getting there. I think the way I would try and frame this up is that, simply stated, where we have been is able to fly within visual line of sight. Where we're trying to get is well beyond that, literally beyond visual line of sight, and that is it's a completely new thing in aviation. Our entire aviation system is built upon essentially one pilot, one aircraft, or one pilot responsible for one aircraft, and to be able to see and avoid other aircraft. Of course, we got rules where if you can't see another aircraft, then different rules apply. But when you don't have the pilot on the aircraft itself and you can't do see and avoid, then that begs a whole bunch of different questions. We're in the process of addressing those questions right now in a regulatory process. It's going to take a little while, but we're making good progress right now.
So good morning, Brian. Thanks for coming on the show. Really, really interesting. I love the development that's going on here, and I love the arguments as to where it's going to go next. But along the beyond visual line of sight, those regulatory things that you say you're talking about there, what are some of the thoughts that are on there? What are some of the leading things? Do we have control towers, government FAA controlling lanes, et cetera? What is the discussion there? How do we move past this and allow for these autonomous drones or fleet managers of drones, if you will, to operate beyond line of sight?
Well, it's easy for me to answer that question now because we literally have a what's called a BVLOS, Beyond Visual Line of Sight, Aviation Rulemaking Committee, ARC. I come from the land of acronyms here, and in that discussion, we have broken down. There are over 100 people, industry experts, technology experts, and that doesn't include the subject matter experts that are being brought into different discussions that have been broken down in really a vast substructure of challenges that we're looking at. The technology is probably going to be the easiest part. And when it's all said and done, none of this is a snap your fingers and it all comes into play. The hardest part of all is, what's the justification for regulations in the first place? And for that, we're actually governed by law. There's laws that apply to what you're allowed to regulate and what's the justification for that regulation. The good news is that particularly during the COVID time when we needed a more robust supply chain and we needed to keep people at a social distance, we demonstrated just how valuable this technology can be in and of itself, and when we get to scale, how it can be a complete game changer for logistics in general. So the discussion is underway. There's a regulatory element to that. There's what are the economic and societal benefits to that? Those are vast. I'm actually directly involved in that particular discussion. There's what are the industry needs? How do we structure the industry? How do we develop the infrastructure that's needed? To your question about do we need a brand new air traffic control system, et cetera? We call that unmanned traffic management, or UTM. And all of these things are underway. A very robust discussion. It's not going to be a quick one.
Gotcha. So, Brian, one of the first discussions that I've had regarding drones is how do you plan a city around drone delivery? Obviously, in places like New York City, Chicago, where you've got skyscrapers in that downtown area, it's really difficult to fly a drone and to navigate it through those city streets, which could be a place where drones are really applicable to alleviate that traffic and to kind of get people off the road there. How are you guys kind of planning for this and for city expansion as they get bigger and bigger?
Yeah, I really feel like I'm home in watching this show because I'm a recovering economist by training. I love transportation technologies. the thing that pulls transportation technologies into the mainstream is always logistics. Always look to the logistics guys and what they're doing. And what you'll note, even though we're talking about drones today, is that the UPSs, the FedEx, the Purelators, they're all, and beyond. Amazon, of course, has been a major player in this. They're all looking beyond just drones. And so it's kind of like my previous life in promoting electric vehicles. There are different kinds of vehicles for all kinds of different missions and operations, as you well know, in the freight business. So there's no simplistic way to look at this, but there are some really incredible solutions and ideas and innovations that are underway out there, including things like putting, the on top of our wireless cell phone masts, put drone ports up there that could literally be activated by anyone. It could be an EMS drone. It could be something that's delivering. It could be something that's gathering situational awareness for police if they need that before they get to a particular scene, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not just about delivery, but delivery is really, really important. And of course, in urban environments, they're very dense. It's very complicated and very busy airspace. I am imagining that some of the things that we'll see are not unlike the kind of solutions we have today, where people live in apartment buildings, and you see a particular place where packages are delivered to, and people can come and get their packages, things of that nature.
So outside of that, Brian, when we talk about the infrastructure that's going on, and you talk about the interstate system that we've built, right? And within the infrastructure bill, there's plans to correct some wrongs or change some portions within different cities of that interstate where it divided neighborhoods and so on and so forth. How do you plan for that moving forward? So the question really is, okay, if we've got all this drone delivery, how do you structure those airwaves so that there isn't rejection from the public, for instance, if it becomes too dense with those flying, with the drones moving overhead, right? I can't imagine a lot of people are going to be really happy about hundreds of drones flying over their house on a Sunday afternoon delivering, a cappuccino or Chipotle.
Yeah, that's a great point. And yes, we've seen this in the infrastructure for highways. We've also seen it, interestingly, in next gen, what we call next gen in the aviation air traffic control system, where because of precision-based navigation, aircraft tend to go over the same house, multiple times a day in what feels very, very troublesome. And so noise becomes a very, very large issue. That is in spite of the fact that our airliners get quieter and quieter all the time. And by the way, I'm in one of those corridors here near the Dulles Airport, outside of Washington, D.C. So I'm not unmindful of the fact that aviation noise is a huge concern and something that we need to be thinking about. I would think about drones a little bit differently. They don't necessarily have to go down a particular corridor. And I think the system that we're literally trying to build now is one in which ultimately, not immediately, but ultimately the drones are figuring out in real time how to get from point A to point B. We've got massively more flexibility in the aviation system today because we have GPS. And I know I've been flying for 30 years now, and I've watched this process and have tried to take advantage of every single technological innovation as it's come along. And my ability to fly today, even through complex airspace like New York, which I did last week, has been greatly enhanced. But we're layering that over a system that was built a long, long time ago, and dealing with some of the implications of that. If the aircraft are literally at lower altitudes sorting themselves out, then we can put different areas. We can, if you will, picket fence certain areas. It might be a schoolyard where kids are at a particular time during the day, where we don't want drones flying over there for a variety of reasons, not just noise. But noise, we can do that as well. We can build those into the systems. That said, just a quick plug, not unlike the interstate commerce or the interstate highway system, we are going to need to build that system at the federal level. There's going to need to be a very robust collaborative effort for local and state authorities in deciding where those picket fences go if we need those. But the system itself has to work the same way. And that's the beauty of the interstate highway system. Even though it's not perfect, it's created trillions of dollars in value for this country and so forth. So that's what that's the game we're playing right now.
Brian, I'm really glad that you brought up that idea of federal collaboration. My last question for you this morning, is it going to take that full federal collaboration from both local, state, and then the federal government to ensure that we don't lose equity when it comes to these places that these drones are accessible to, getting them out to everybody? Because obviously it's a service that if you are willing to pay for it, you should have the opportunity to get that delivery option for you. What type of collaboration needs to happen between those three levels of government to ensure that people aren't left out of this opportunity?
Yeah, we've been looking at this for some time now, and I think in 2017, we were on the forefront. My organization, the Association for Unmanned Vehicle Systems International, was on the forefront of calling for a pilot project that would allow for local and state authorities to come together and tribal authorities to come together and work together to see what are the benefits here, how do we make sure that we build a very collaborative effort to try and get everyone to take advantage of this. Equity is an exceedingly important part of the discussion around societal benefits for unmanned systems across the board in all domains. People with disabilities, people that live outside of urban areas that typically, for a whole variety of reasons, have not had the same benefits or access to the same technologies that we in more urban concentrated areas have had. In some ways, drones will help us to address those folks and get them services faster. We see this down in Africa where beyond visual line of sight flights are being done fairly routinely with medical supplies, et cetera. So we've got models for that. And as I indicated in the BVLOS ARC, Beyond Visual Line of Sight Aviation Rulemaking Committee, which is developing these rules and recommendations to the FAA, this is a very, very, very important discussion, not just for this administration, but for my entire community.
Awesome, Brian. Well, thank you for joining us this morning on FreightWaves Now. Unfortunately, that's all the time that we have. We'll make a small plug. I might reach out to you to see if you could come on my show at your doorstep to continue this conversation. Thank you so much for joining us again, and have a great rest of your Tuesday.
My great pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Excellent stuff. I'll be watching that episode. I wish we had much more time.
It's going to happen.
Very, very interesting things.